Welcome to my podcast, All Things Agriculture. I'm your host, Eric Carey, and thank you for tuning in. On this podcast, get to know those who work in agriculture on a daily basis. Find out what they do, the challenges and opportunities they face, and what they think the future holds for agriculture. You'll also have a chance to hear what they do for fun when they aren't working hard to feed the world. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a thumbs up and a comment below. If you prefer the audio version, you can listen for free on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, please email me at allthingsagr@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to All Things Agriculture Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Carey, and I am honored to be joined with Mr. Mike Boerman. Mike, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Eric?
Good.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Definitely.
As one of the first guests.
Yeah. Oh, you came to mind when I had this when it was going through trying to get it together. So
People always tell me I have a face for radio, so it makes sense.
face for radio, voice for print.
Yeah, exactly. Silent films.
So anyway, Mike, if people don't know who Mike is, he's a digester man, and if you don't know anything about methane digesters, it's a great thing that you're watching this because you're going to learn everything you could ever imagine to know about them. So Mike, take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, they're basically the kind of the elevator pitch of anaerobic digestion is it's essentially the mechanical external same process as what's going on in the stomach of a cow. So it's microorganisms in a large heated tank that break down wastes such as manure or food waste or anything organic waste. It harvests the methane off of it. It captures the methane off the top, and then that methane gets used as an energy source for either electrical generation or can be upgraded and used in the natural gas pipelines.
So that gas, obviously methane, is extremely flammable.
Yep. Yeah. So it's methane is the same gas that is in the natural gas grid. That is traditionally and commercially on a large scale. That's what gets fracked. In hydrofracking, they're fracking for methane, natural gas. It gets cleaned to 98% methane, or 98.5 or something is the utility standard. And then that's what you use in your stove and dryer, hot water heater, every day. And all we're doing is we're capturing that gas from things that would otherwise be waste, primarily, like I mentioned, dairy manure, but also food waste. So things that will go to a landfill. When it's in the landfill, it'll also break down. It'll release that methane emissions and carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere. And then, but we're actually trying to create conditions that will enhance the production of gas, and then we capture that. And at the facility I work at now, we use it. We generate about 1.2 megawatts of electricity.
On a daily basis?
So we're rated at 1.2 megawatts, which means that every hour it creates 1.2 megawatts.
Okay. Oh, per hour. Wow.
Per hour. Yep.
So in terms of powering homes, what would that equate to?
Yeah. So that's, it's about like 900 to 1,000 homes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Off of one digester.
Yep.
So who do you work for?
So I work for a company called Natural Upcycling. We're actually primarily a food waste diversion company. So we have a lot of trucks. We started in 2014. Started with Chris Noble and Harry Cohen, our business partners, Chris owns a dairy farm out in western New York, Noblehurst Farms. They were building a digester, and we're looking for ways to secure streams of food waste to come into the digester as a form of revenue. They met up with Harry Cohen, and they started this company together. Harry Cohen has a background in waste and recycling collection business. They started with just a few Wegmans grocery stores around the Rochester area. Since 2014, we've grown to, I believe it's over 90 of all of Wegmans locations, but also from, we stretch all the way up from, eastern Massachusetts all the way down to northern Virginia. So we're in 6 or 7 states now at this point. So
Wow.
yeah.
In
so
6 years.
In 6 years, yeah. It's been a long few years.
So does all of that food waste collected in that 6-state area, is that all come back to Western New York, or
no?
how is that distributed?
We bill ourselves as a total solutions food waste company. So we are, primarily, the way we kind of get our foot in the door is through these, smaller grocery stores and or small to large grocery stores, as well as, we pick up everything from your small coffee shop that's got, one 32-gallon bin every other week, to, large grocery stores that have, 2 tons 3 days a week that we collect. And so with that, our biggest cost or biggest expense is transportation. So we try to find partners in as locally as we can to keep our footprint as small as we can in a localized region. So, we'll work with, we don't only exclusively work with anaerobic digestion, we work with composters as well. So there's a lot of municipality composters, a lot of small composters. And that's honestly one of our biggest struggles is natural upcycling is having a place to bring the material that is reliable, that can handle the amount of volume that we're taking. We'll get a lot of people coming to us saying, hey, we're starting a compost site. We really want, you to bring some material. And we'll say, all right, how much would you like us to bring you? And they'll say, yeah, bring us as much as you can. We can take it. And then we bring one 10-ton dump truck load and dump it off. And they said, oh, that's a lot. They're like, yeah. They're like, how many of these do you have? I'm like, well, at least 3 to 4 a week. And they say, all right, well, we can take one a month. It can be kind of frustrating, but so, we're always working to kind of vertically integrate a little bit more. So, we started off with just working in with the digester at Noblehurst Farms and bringing all our waste there to now where we've expanded. We're working with a lot of different partners, but we're always trying to, be as closely involved with those partners as we can, to help them succeed, but then through that will help us succeed as well. So, we have kind of, starting to get more into the management consultant side of things where we're, consulting on the management of digesters or compost sites and helping operate them so that they can be successful. So we have a place to bring our food waste.
Yeah, because you have to you can only grow as much as the people who are able to process your material can grow to
right.
You're kind of bottlenecked by, you're hoping they can keep up with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because if we're driving a route and then we bring it to a place that says, oh, sorry, we can't take it. There's only so many places more we can take it. And it kind of, doesn't work very well.
Yeah. So in terms of, maybe you don't know this number, like in terms of total waste in a week, what do you think is the tonnage that you're pulling?
I used to know that number, but I don't. I'm trying to remember what it was. A year ago, I knew that number, but I know it's probably almost, grown by 40 to 50% in the past year. But say one of our routes collects 40 tons a week. And we've got about 16 trucks on the road.
Wow.
So you can do the math.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And that's just in our collections. So that's with our trucks going door to door to grocery store, restaurant, cafeteria, collecting the food waste. We also, most of the tonnage we move is actually through large food manufacturers. So we'll take in truckloads of, you name it, expired Shamrock Shake mix or expired ice cream or something that was mislabeled or not packaged properly. And with that, at one single site, the site that I'm managing right now, we processed about 1,200 tons of that last week of the packaged food waste.
Wow.
So that is just food waste coming from food manufacturers.
So much food goes to waste.
It's a lot of food.
People don't realize.
The 40% of what goes into landfills, 40% of what is in a landfill is organic waste or food waste. And
that's. I mean, if people aren't startled by that, that's so much food that could go to feeding people, and it's just thrown away.
Yeah. So we, that's the USDA has a hierarchy of food needs. And we are, it goes to, normal food service and grocery stores. And then after that, it's feeding people through donations and things like that. And then it's not till after that it goes to animal feed. And then after that, it's compost and anaerobic digestion. And then the very last thing is landfill.
So we're probably doing a better job now than we have in the past, but at the same time, we're probably producing more waste just because, more population, more food. Or is that true, or am I not right?
I think, I actually, I don't know. But just looking at it, I think we're obviously, with the population that it is today, I mean, America is producing more food probably than it's ever produced in its history. But along with that, I'm not sure that it's gotten a lot more efficient as far as the food cycle and getting that food to consumers and consumers eating all of it. But I don't actually know any numbers on that.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's not surprising because you go into a grocery store and one little grocery store in one little town in New York, over in Groton, I go get my food at Price Chopper. It's just like all the food.
We collect from there.
Do you? Yeah. Well, you look at all the fresh food, and I buy a lot of fresh food, but still, it's like not all that food is going to be sold, and there's so much, and it's just
it's a lot, and even the stuff that comes to us. I mean, it's good for us, it's good for business, but sometimes it's almost sickening of the volume, but then also there's stuff that is there's nothing wrong with it. We got 10 truckloads of beer the other day that it was packaged in 15 packs instead of 12 packs, and so I guess I'm not going to name the company, but
it was no good.
The beer was fine, but they
sale.
deemed it cheaper, I guess, to send it to us than it would be to rebrand it or remarket it to be 15 packs, or even to just sell it at a 12 pack price.
So did one of those trucks make a stop at your house on the way through?
No.
Mike, your garage is full.
Yeah. We bring a stop out to AGR. Really make some money off of it.
Yeah. That'd be very profitable.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess in terms of what you do, you said you manage or oversee one of the digesters?
Yeah. So since I've been with the company, primarily my job has been managing kind of the customer relations and driver aspects of a lot of our routing. But in the past, actually since the beginning of March, when kind of COVID started happening, it's actually through COVID we got shoehorned into this. But I've been managing a facility in Auburn that takes in food waste. It's got a large piece of equipment called a Tiger depackager that kind of, for lack of a better term, macerates the packaging and separates the cardboard and plastics from the actual organics. So yeah, I've been there. It was originally a contract for us to provide them as Natural Upcycling with food waste. I was kind of sent on site to audit kind of the process to make sure that our waste was being processed properly and it wasn't, being just put into a dumpster or something other than being processed through digestion. And then kind of spent some time there and got to talk to the manager and kind of learned that I had a history and knowledge of digesters, and they asked me for some help in managing it. So that's kind of where it's been. I spend my days there. I'm still managing the trucking and routing aspect of things, but kind of my day-to-day is more on the digester management side.
Keeping that running smoothly.
Yeah, keeping the digester running smoothly, keeping the food waste, processing through the system. And, the digester that I'm managing, it was originally built by Cayuga County. They didn't really have a great business plan to begin with. And then, they operated it for a few years, found that they weren't very good at operating it, weren't very profitable at it, and they were kind of losing money. It didn't work out the way it kind of looked on paper originally. And so they decided to shut it down, and they actually just kind of turned the key off and walked away and left all the tanks filled with manure and filled with food waste, and just left it for a couple of years. It just sat vacant with the grass growing up. And then a company out of San Francisco called Generate Capital, which is an investment company that's focused on renewable energies, they ended up coming in and buying it. And so they've kind of owned it since 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, and they've been trying to get it back on its feet, back up to operating capacity.
So some of I know exactly the facility you talk about, and some of the theory was with the amount of dairies in Cayuga County and in the Auburn area, so they would be able to bring manure in to help power.
Yeah.
That was kind of the theory in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah.
Before you got involved.
Well, yeah. So back when the county owned it, and their original business plan was, they're going to build it all on grant funds, so it'd essentially be free to build. They're going to take in mainly just dairy manure from a lot of the dairies. It's a really highly dense dairy population in Cayuga County. And their plan was to charge the dairy farmers to bring them the manure, and then they were going to sell fertilizer back to the dairy farms. They built it, and the dairy farms were like, "What? what was that?"
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and so they kind of tried to shift their business plan a little bit. To take in food waste, and they weren't charging the dairies to bring in manure, but the dairies were still having to pay for trucking to get it there. And then the food waste, they kind of had priced not so right. They weren't really familiar with the food waste market. And then they, the operators of it were, county employees that went home at 5:00 and didn't come in till 9 a.m. and kind of whatever happened at night. It's the same as running a dairy. It's 24 hours a day when the cow's waters freeze over, and you gotta thaw it out and make sure that the cows are getting water. Otherwise, you're gonna have poor results. Yeah,
like you've always told me that you have to keep that biological engine humming, and if it's not, it can. You don't get it's not as efficient.
Yeah, you're taking care of a live animal essentially, and that's what it is. And it doesn't sleep. It's always operating 24 hours a day. It's always digesting, and you gotta always be paying attention to it. So
You got a cool app, don't you? Or you did?
yeah, no, I
you
do.
can track it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's essentially just a remote view into the computer that's at the digester, and I can control probably 90% of it. But that doesn't mean I don't have to go in
Yeah,
at
yeah,
night
yeah.
when not everything can be done from a computer. I had to go in on last night actually on Christmas just because our engine needed to change a couple spark plugs, but there's always something that you got to actually be on site to do.
It's like they know when Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving are, isn't it? It's
Right,
like
right.
cows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what my wife, what Morgan said to me when I said I had to go in. She goes, "Doesn't the digester know it's Christmas?" I said, "Yeah, it does actually. That's why
That's why
I
I
need to
called.
go in." Yeah.
Exactly. If it were just a random
Right.
Friday night, it would.
Yeah, exactly.
You can wait till tomorrow. Yeah. So I guess a little bit of more background on you. So how did you get into the whole digesters?
Yeah.
Like
so it started in high school actually. A local farm that I was associated with that I knew was building one, a digester, and I was in 4-H and they did a whole presentation on the digester, and that kind of piqued my interest at first, and then we did, you and I did junior dairy leaders together. We went to see several of them, and I was always something that kind of drew my attention to the dairies we went to that had these digesters that were taking something that is seen as a waste or a byproduct, and they was actually using it for something very valuable. On top of being able to use as fertilizer, you're also able to use it to power the dairy. So I was always interested in kind of renewable energies and taking things from waste. I didn't really, at that point know exactly what I wanted to do or what I was going to do. But when I went to college, I sat down with, actually, it wasn't even my advisor, but I wanted him to be, but was Mike Van Amberg. And, I basically had made the commitment that I didn't want to go home for any summer or any break. I didn't want to waste that time. I wanted to travel. I wanted to essentially learn what I wanted to do with my life through different means. And so he said, "All right, well, what are your interests?" And I said, "Well, I'm interested in renewable energy. I think digesters are cool, but I think renewable energy is kind of the future and gonna only grow from here." And he said, "All right, well, do you have any language background?" I said, "Well, I took a German class when I was in high school." And he said, "Oh, okay, interesting." And he says, "Well, I have a colleague that runs a biogas lab in Germany at a university in Germany that I can send you there for a summer." Okay. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So
twist my arm.
Yeah, exactly. So I went to Germany. That was the summer after my freshman year of college. I worked for part of the time I was at a university, University of Hohenheim, working in a biogas research lab where we were testing out different powders and different additives for digesters to increase the process, or to help reduce the amount of other gases other than methane that we were getting out of the process. And then the other half of the time I actually spent on a dairy farm that had a digester that was operating. And it was interesting, the advisor I was working with, or the colleague in Germany that I was working with, he called me about 2 months before I was supposed to leave, and he says, "Well, we've got everything all set up, but I'm a little bit worried about your German, speaking German." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I've been there. A lot of people speak English." He says, "Yeah, but the farm you're going to, the family, it's way out in the country. They don't speak any English." I said, "Oh, well, I mean, I took German in high school, and when I learned I was going to Germany, I took it at Cornell, and I can have conversational German and ask directions and those types of things." He said, "Yeah, but the family doesn't speak German. I said, okay. So it turns out the family actually, they spoke German, but it was kind of like, the Louisiana accent of Germany. It was called Schwäbisch, and it was in southern Germany. And, he goes, I have a hard time understanding what they're saying. And so I was like real concerned about that for a while, but it was actually kind of interesting because when I got to the farm, the first part was at the university, and where everyone pretty much spoke English to me, but when we were in meetings and things like that, everyone spoke German, and I could follow along every third or fourth word and try to make sense of what they were saying. But then when I got to the dairy, I don't know if it was just kind of the context, like I understood what they were saying. I could actually understand them better than I could when I was at the university. And I think that was, like I said, just because I could understand like the context of what they wanted to say and what was going on in the situation, where I, understood what they said. And so it actually wasn't a problem at all. And it's really quite an experience kind of being immersed in a place that they don't speak your language at all. And you're kind of forced to speak that language. And it ended up coming in handy fast forward 6 or 8 years, but I'll get into that in a second. But so after that summer in Germany, I kind of had made the decision, this is really cool. I really want to, this is what I want to work with. I want to work with these digesters. I want to produce electricity. I want to, make something out of waste. Came back and spent the next break I had kind of going around to different farms in New York, learning about their digesters, and soon to find out that the digesters in the US were very, very different than the ones in Germany. I mean, it's still the same biological process, but it's the technology, is very different. And part of that is because in Germany, when they kind of, the government was pushing for these digesters, they really incentivized the operation of the digester. So the payment for electricity, value of the gas, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas in the U.S., it kind of had not a backwards approach per se, but it was different from the German approach, where in the U.S., when they pushed for digesters, they said, all right, we're going to provide this much funding for you to build a digester, and then it's on you to operate it and make money off of it. Whereas, there was a lot of grants available. Farms were building digesters, but then once the digester was built, they had no incentives for it to run efficiently or make a lot of gas from it, or, there was also no incentives for the technology to work for them. Whereas, in Germany, it was, okay, we have to come up with this money ourselves, but if we can operate at this high level, then, we'll be able to make more money. So needless to say that the technology that kind of is born from those two different ideologies was very, very different. And so kind of had to start from square one in learning about digestion and, the kind of the process and how the process worked in a U.S. facility. And then, our summer before our senior year, you and I went up to Maine together, and we worked at Stony Vale Farms. I thought I was wearing my shirt, but I'm not.
I should have worn. I still had that jacket. Great family, great farm.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you got the job, I think before I did, but we had no idea we were applying for the same farm.
Yeah, we didn't know until I think we were having a conversation. We're like, yeah, I'm going to Maine. Oh, no way, me too. We ended up living in the same apartment together.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right up. Upstairs.
Right upstairs. I was downstairs, and we had a good time with that.
We had some quirky neighbors, to say the least. But yeah. Mike did digestion. I did all the herd work. About 1,000 cow dairy. So
Yep.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. So they were the digester they had was very similar to the German style. It was actually a Canadian company that built it. And they were really trying to make the digester itself into its own business. It wasn't just an asset from the farm or something to try to write off on their taxes. It was something they were really trying to build into a business of its own. And that really kind of intrigued me and kind of engaged my interest a lot more, because it wasn't like, well, let's just spend some money and try to get some tax write-offs or some renewable energy credits. It was let's try to make something that's going to grow into something bigger than it is.
And they've had, well, for just in terms of, it's state by state too, in terms of like the subsidizing.
Yeah, there's some like federal monies available for grant monies, but as far as kind of the way it's structured for how you get paid for the electricity or the energy value is state by state. So it's very different, even across just, a mile down the road. If you're in a different state, it's completely different.
Yeah. I think I asked you this question before, but not in this conversation, but other conversations about why digesters aren't really scalable in terms of, isn't it, if you have like a farm our size, 200 cows, you have to basically build a digester that would be sufficient for a larger so it's kind of, you can't downscale a digester, can you?
Yeah, and that's kind of I get asked this question a lot, and it's kind of changing through the years. I mean, as the cost of technology decreases, it becomes easier and more scalable. And there are companies now that'll build digesters or, different kind of smaller scale digesters for 100 or 200 cow farms. But really, in the grand scheme of things, the cost of a concrete tank is not going to be very much different if you're building a 100,000 gallon tank versus a 200,000 gallon tank. That incremental cost is very small. So the bigger you can build it, you then can implement the economies of scale, and it makes it a lot more sense to operate. And then if you're going to be running your engine or running an engine off the biogas, then it's kind of the same thing where the cost of the engine is a huge cost, and it doesn't matter if it's 500 kW engine or 20 kW engine. Maybe at that big of difference, it'll scale it a little bit differently, but there's not a huge cost difference.
So I guess more into the engine. I know when we were in Maine, I think they have one engine, or they're gonna install a second.
In Maine, when we were there, they had one engine. Since we've left, they've actually got 3 engines now, and they've built whole nother digester tank that is double the size of what they had when we were there.
Yeah, because I went on Google Earth the other day just to check. I haven't looked at their farm or been up there since we left 8-9 years ago, and I see they had a huge digester that they installed.
Yeah, it's when we were up there, they had two tanks that were in series that were 400,000 gallons apiece, so a total of 800,000 gallons. And they just built, they claim it to be the largest digester tank in North America. I don't know if that's been verified or not.
Really?
Yeah, I don't actually think it is. But anyways, it's 2 million gallons. So it's pretty, it's pretty huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they essentially doubled the size of it with just one kind of fell swoop.
So then, and for the engines, there's different sizes. There's a lot of upkeep and maintenance with the engines as well.
The engines are essentially natural gas engines. And the thing about, dairy digesters or a lot of anaerobic digesters is the gas is pretty dirty. It's about, anywhere from 50 to 65% methane, and the remainder being carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide and then also hydrogen sulfide is pretty small proportions, but it's pretty potent stuff. So even in the small proportions, it can be dangerous and harmful for the engines. So with that, running that dirty gas through it takes a lot of maintenance on the engines, a lot of upkeep, and it makes kind of their lives a little bit harder.
Yeah, it's corrosive, right?
It's incredibly corrosive gas. Yeah. So everything in the system that the gas comes into contact with really should be either PVC or stainless steel. A lot of times it's stainless steel, which is actually one of the things, when I went from the digesters in Germany all the way to the digesters in the U.S., that was one thing I noticed, is that in the U.S., these early versions of digesters, weren't using stainless steel on everything. And after just a couple years, things were just rotting out completely and just corroding. And it was just kind of a lesson that they shouldn't have had to learn.
Yeah, I guess they weren't.
Yeah. It goes back to they were building it for, trying to build it for cost, not necessarily to last long and to make money off of it. They were trying to build it for the cheapest price they could.
Yeah, sometimes nips you in the butt.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess what's the what do you think the outlook for digesters are?
Pretty good, actually, for both digesters and compost. At least in New York State and in New England, over the past couple of years, there's been quite a bit of legislation, essentially saying that any producer of food waste over X amount can no longer send that to a landfill. They have to send it to either animal feed, digestion, or compost. And so New York State just, I guess it was 2019, passed that law. They kind of snuck it in. It's been talked about for a number of years, but nobody really paid attention to it when it came out, because it came out the same time as the plastic bag ban. Oh. And so
it's a good way to
they snuck it in with that, so everyone was upset about the plastic bag ban. No one paid attention to the food waste legislation. But basically, I believe the legislation worked where if any food manufacturer that is producing over 2 tons per week has to send it to either digestion or compost. And with that, there are obviously, stipulations and exemptions. And, I think schools and nursing homes are exempt. And also there's like a mileage. So there has to be a processing facility within, I think, 25 miles of your location. Otherwise, the law doesn't apply to you. So,
yeah.
So, it goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, and the kind of the infrastructure in the area for being able to handle, large amounts of food waste is just at this point non-existent. And, it's going to grow, it's going to get better, but it's kind of a chicken egg problem.
Yeah. Got to get started at some part. Yeah.
Right. Well, when, I was involved with several meetings in Albany about this legislation originally, and they were talking about that mileage exemption, and I said, these meetings were in downtown Albany. I said, you guys don't have a facility within 25 miles of downtown Albany that can accept this level of food waste. And they said, no, yes we do. Yeah. And they would bring up this map of all these places that either had permits or pending permits. And I said, well, no, that guy's closed. That place doesn't accept food waste. They have permits for it, but they don't accept it. And, just went through and said, no, none of these places would actually work. And they're like, oh, well, you've given us a lot to think about.
That's why it's good to consult with those who are on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Get a good
idea.
Yeah, because they don't even know what's in their own backyard.
Yeah, precisely. But, so then after, to kind of get back to, after graduation, I ended up going down to Maryland, working on a dairy farm in Maryland that was trying to build, they wanted to build an anaerobic digester on the dairy. They milked about 1,500 cows. Worked there for a number of years, spent a lot of time, applying for grants, and working through the permitting process. And that's one of the pieces that actually takes the longest when building a digester is one is permitting, but the other is actually working with the utility on the interconnection for whether it's natural gas or electricity, getting the ability to actually tie it into the grid can be a long and tedious process. We ended up, getting it about 75% grant funded. We did get the kind of the interconnection right of way from the power company. And then kind of the milk price ended up going down. That was in, I forget what year that was now.
Would have been probably 15, 16.
Yeah. The milk price really kind of tanked, and then there was one more grant that we were applying for that was kind of bring us up to 98% grant funding. We ended up not getting that one. And we'd been working on it for a couple years, and my wife and I wanted to move back to New York State, and so we kind of said, "Oh, I think we're gonna throw the towel in on this one." So we ended up moving back to New York, and I started working for a company that built digesters as kind of a project manager. We were working on two sites at once. One was in Niagara Falls, the other was in Plattsburgh. So the two farthest corners.
At least you kind of live in the center.
Right. Yeah, it's only 5 hours each way. So
only 5 hours.
No, I think Niagara Falls is a little bit closer, but yeah, Plattsburgh was like 4 or 5 hours, and that was a little bit rough because I was leaving on Monday morning at 5 a.m. and getting back at Friday night at 6 p.m. and it was
living out of a suitcase.
Living out of a suitcase a lot. But with that company, so it was actually a German company that was trying to kind of make their impact in the U.S. on digesters, and ended up they were sending these technicians from Germany and these construction workers from Germany, and finally after a number of years my German experience ended up paying off, because I ended up just essentially being a translator, and kind of like a blue collar translator, and which is a very different language than just prim and proper German. My oldest sister is a German teacher, and so she would ask me to provide her with any sort of material she could use in her classes and things like that. And I would give her these pamphlets and construction drawings and things like that. And she goes, "I don't understand any of this. This isn't real German." I'm like, "Oh, I know what it says."
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Yeah. But no, it was a good experience, and definitely got to learn a lot more about the intricate, smaller details of the construction of digesters and how it works, and then the much broader relations between kind of the power companies and actually when the kind of the rubber hits the road of how it actually works. Because you can talk to people and gain as much information as you can, but until you're actually doing it, it's definitely a different experience. So I was with them for a while. They kind of had their leads dry up in the U.S. as far as building new digesters. With that, there's a lot of disagreements between a lot of the contractors and the actual German mother company. That was not looking so good. And it all just came down to kind of poor miscommunications between, what the construction companies thought they wanted and what the German engineers said they wanted. And so,
plus a bad milk market.
Digester
gets shelved for a while.
Yeah, the digesters get shelved for a while, and then there's some shady people involved. That I decided I'm not going to tie myself to this for a while, and I ended up leaving there, and I kind of got poached away from by Natural Upcycling. they, Noblehurst was building their digester. That was, I kind of came into NVTech on the tail end of the construction of their digester there. So I was kind of somewhat involved with that one. And so I was, in communications with Chris and Harry about, trying to get food waste to other digesters. And so then when I decided to make the change, I kind of reached out to them and said, hey, you guys looking for somebody that knows anything about digesters. And here we are.
Yeah. Took you all over across the ocean, and
Yeah.
cool experience though.
Yeah, and it's kind of been a little serendipitous because, like you said, I've been all over the U.S. and over the world looking at these digesters and working with digesters, and here I end up working at one that's 20 minutes from my house.
Yeah, that's. Hey.
That wasn't planned.
Yeah. And then even before high school, like, did you grow up on a farm or?
So I grew up on a hobby farm. So my father's a furniture salesman. It was Boerman's Furniture Farm. Shameless plug.
Hey, do it, man. Great place. I've been there. Funny quick story though.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you ever go to the furniture farm, or at least it's probably been 5, 6, 7 years since I've been there. And then it's an old hay barn,
Not
right?
much has changed. Yeah, it's an old, tie stall barn with, that was converted, and he built 5 floors in it. So
yeah, so you walk up these stairs, and I think is it the top floor where it's just chairs?
yeah, that's the 3rd floor.
Okay,
Yeah.
3rd floor.
Top floor is dining room tables.
Oh. You need a map.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
The big heavy tables go on the top floor.
Because you probably lugged them up there, right? Yeah,
exactly.
That's how I was going. So there's all these chairs hanging from the ceiling, on the walls, on the floor. And I go up to Mike after your dad showed us around. I go, man, there's a lot of I've never seen so many chairs in one place. And he go, yeah, and imagine who had to put them all there. 3 floors.
I don't harbor any resentment at all for that.
Teaches character, right?
Builds character. Right. Builds character for sure. So yeah, that was kind of my childhood was actually moving furniture, going to auctions, buying furniture. But my father actually grew up on a dairy farm. His father had a 15 cow Guernsey farm back in the 50s. When my father was still young when they shut that down, and I think he kind of always wanted to get back into it and have a farm and cows. So he kind of, we had animals, hobby animals. We had horses and cows and chickens that we raised for 4-H and showed cows in 4-H. So I was kind of always involved within agriculture and within the dairy industry. But it was, I kind of followed, my brother was more into it than I was even. So I kind of followed in his footsteps in as far as, getting involved with the dairy industry and kind of junior dairy leaders program. And kind of through the junior dairy leaders program is what led me to Cornell.
Yeah, and that's how we met.
Through junior dairy leaders. Yeah. How old were we? That was in 2008. So.
Yeah, we were juniors.
That was 12 years ago.
Yeah. I think you're the first person I met because I didn't know a single person.
Together.
We roomed together. I roomed with you and Steve Gould on the Wisconsin trip.
Yeah.
So if you've never been junior dairy leaders, it's basically 25, 30 juniors, seniors from all over New York State. Yeah. The first time you get together is when you go to World Dairy Expo in Wisconsin. And so I didn't know a single person at this. And we just ended up standing next to each other, I think in line for security. And we got talking about, you did wrestling, you ran cross country. So we had that, I didn't wrestle, but I was just a sports guy. We got talking about that and kind of clicked. So
It was, again, it was you, me, and Steve Gould that stayed in the hotel room on the first night. And we didn't know anybody.
It was a lot of fun. I had a lot, and there's guys who were in there, like, Jake Fisher was in there with us. And, so, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah. So,
so then, I was, through junior dairy leaders, I got involved, but, I was always showing cows in 4-H and involved with that. So
that's how you got your, kind of your, not not growing up in a commercial farm, but you're just exposed enough where you
Right.
grew a lot of interest.
Right.
And,
Yep. Yeah. And then, my brother, like I said, he was 8 years older than me. So he, by the time I was a junior, senior in high school, he was already out of school, working on a dairy. He was working on a 500 cow dairy and outside of Cortland for a while. And then now he actually runs a 15,000 cow dairy out in Indiana.
yeah. Does he have a digester?
He does not,
Oh.
but we are in talks.
I was going to
I'm chipping away at him.
that'd be a hell of would you had to do can you build one you had to do multiple?
You'd have to do multiple
Yeah.
tanks, yeah.
That's,
Yeah, no, that'd be a lot. It's a lot of cow shit.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. So I kind of like to ask this to everyone I have on is if you had no involvement in agriculture, never chose this career, what do you think you would have ended up doing? Like, what's something that...
It's an interesting question. I'd either... when I was, deciding, what school to go to and whether, I was going to go to Cornell, my other options was actually going to be a pilot. For a long time, I wanted to be a pilot and an astronaut. And not like when I was a little kid, I want to be an astronaut, but like when I was, thinking about what school to go to, I, kind of had that in the back of my mind of becoming a commercial pilot or going into the military to become a military pilot. That didn't, I kind of made the decision I didn't really want to do that for the rest of my life. But, but now I am kind of working on getting my pilot's license, just kind of, it's always something I wanted to do. And so I reserve that for fun and not for a career. But, if I wasn't involved in agriculture, that's probably where I would have gone. But in retrospect, with my experience now, I actually, if I had to do it again, I'd probably go to be an electrician. I work with a lot of electrical things, electrical components at the digester, and it's just something I think is pretty cool, pretty interesting.
Andy, or at least you know enough to be able to fix just like
I think I do.
Skilled little handy skills. Morgan.
It's all about confidence, Eric.
Fix stuff for Morgan around the house.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant at the digester.
Oh, no. Oh, well, yeah, the digester
that too.
But yeah, no. So we've talked a little bit about your learning to fly. How's that been?
Pretty good. It's gone slower than I'd first wanted to. I've been working at it for about a year now. I'm probably about halfway to my first license. But it's a lot of fun. It's very, very different from driving a car.
Yeah.
But so there are things that are a little bit counterintuitive that you don't necessarily don't come as easy, but there's a lot to learn, and it's all about how much time you take to do it. How much time you have to commit to it. And my father, he actually worked before I was born. He was working on getting his pilot's license, and he never ended up going through with it just because he had kids, and life came. But he always used to say, when you've got the time, you don't have the money, but when you've got the money, you don't have the time.
Yeah,
and so
true.
It's just kind of about making the time to do it.
Well, that'd be really convenient someday if you had your pilot's license and you had to go consult for your brother's digester. You just hop in your plane, and
my plane would be a couple hour flight, not even, and
you're back for supper that night.
That's right. Yeah, that's the goal anyway, to be able to do that. It's been a lot of fun. I fly over your farm all the time. That's kind of my practice grounds are over your farm. So
don't crash into my barns, all right?
Dive. If you see something dive bombing towards you, you'll know who it is.
I had no idea you were. I see, because I'm adjacent to Cortland, and the airport is about 10 minutes down the road from me, and I always just see these little, commuter little planes flying over. One day Mike goes, "Yeah, I flew over your place," and I don't even think I knew you were getting your pilot's license. I'm like, "What are you?" I thought you went out with a friend or something.
Yeah.
No, like I'm learning how to fly, and then you told me essentially
over your farm, and we use Salt Road, and we use this road,
Lick
Street, yeah, as like ground for our ground reference maneuvers, because they're just really long, really straight roads that we kind of use as ground reference points to doing different maneuvers in the sky. So my instructor is based out of 747 Aviation, is based out of the Cortland Airport. And so he has this kind of dedicated practice grounds around about 10 miles from the airport. And yeah, it's right over your farm.
Yeah, no, and I never really would watch, you hear or see a plane fly over. I never really watch it. And then you told me how, like, they'll fly back and forth. And I noticed that. I'd be looking up, I'd see a plane, it would fly, I'd watch it, and and then it'd fly back, and it would just go back and forth. And
yeah,
hey, that's Mike.
And actually, my instructor is just now getting into aerobatics. Oh. And so he just bought an aerobatics plane, so you might see him doing some tricks, some loop-de-loops and hammerheads and all sorts of cool things in the sky.
Is that at the end of your instruction?
Yeah, that's right.
So what's kind of been in terms of learning to fly? What's been like the one thing that you were like kind of coming into it? It's like, well, I had no idea that's how that worked, or you don't ever think about it when you're getting into a plane.
Yeah. So the one thing that is interesting is the amount of steering you do with your feet. And so obviously there's the yoke that you see in the movies that they're always, turning left and right. And for the most part in the air, that's what you use to fly. But there's also the rudder on the back of the plane that kind of points the plane in left or right. And that, you use along with the rudder. So along with the yoke or the ailerons. And so, when you're turning left, you turn the yoke left, but then you also have to press the left pedal, and vice versa. But when you kind of are flying slowly at slow speeds or on the ground or really close to the ground, actually most of your control is with your feet. And it can be kind of counterintuitive when you're kind of coming in for a landing and you've got a crosswind where you have to turn the yoke all the way to the left, and you're trying to move the plane to the right. Where you're actually moving the plane to the right with your feet, but you're turning the yoke to the left, and that's something that's been pretty difficult to get over. Because every vehicle you drive, up until this point, you turn to the left and it turns to the left, and it's
back. Yeah, it's almost like a backwards.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's just a different control that you're using. You're not turning a wheel.
Huh. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, no, it is. There's 100 things I learn every time. It's interesting after my lessons. A lot of times I'll do my lessons at the end of I'll leave work a little bit early and go down and do a lesson, and I'm more exhausted after the lesson than I am after work, just because the mental capacity that it takes, because you're just kind of learning like everything, you're trying to take in as much as you can, and it's exhausting.
What's the most difficult? I always figured taking off and landing must be the hardest.
Landing's definitely the hardest. Taking off's not too bad. You just kind of push the throttle all the way forward and let her go. But
hope you have enough runway.
Hope you have enough runway, exactly. Landing is definitely the most difficult. There's certain maneuvers that you do that you learn in the air that not necessarily difficult, but just kind of becoming accustomed to how aerodynamics work and what each movement with your control actually does, because it's not always as straightforward, and sometimes depending on the way the wind is or depending on the area conditions, what your control does is very different than what it normally is. I guess it's not unlike driving on an icy road, where you drive differently on an icy road than you do on a dry road. So it's just kind of learning that, recognizing the conditions and recognizing, how your controls are going to make the plane react.
So, but besides just flying, what else do you kind of like to do?
My hobbies.
Yeah.
I have a 3-year-old, and well, he's soon to be 3 in February. So between work and my 3-year-old, there's not a whole lot left in my day. Pretty time consuming, but I mean, I golf once a year.
Yeah. You get, yeah.
There's one golf tournament once a year that I golf in.
Yeah. It was, it's funny how once, you graduate and you have all this kind of time if you aren't married, and then the kids come, and then it's just like, everything changes for you in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Definitely some, it's kind of, Morgan and I kind of laugh, after we'll put him to bed and just be exhausted and be like, what did we used to do? We had so much more time, and we just watch Netflix all day. Like, it was crazy because it's like, I don't remember how much time we actually had, but we had a lot of time.
Yeah.
No more. It's only gonna get worse, I think, from what I hear.
What was it? The Terrible Twos, they say? I don't know. That's what I hear.
He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. He gets in these moods where he, then has temper tantrums like any other toddler, but he, overall he's a good kid. It's not bad. Morgan does all the work.
You babysit the digester.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The digester's my child,
yeah.
and Grant is her child.
But no, I was thinking too, earlier the day when I, said you were going to come on over and do this, I was thinking about when we're in Maine, and some of the antics we would deal with in the apartment.
Oh yeah, with Angel,
Pete,
RJ.
Is it RJ or JR? I can't remember.
I think it was RJ. That toothless biker guy. Remember him, the old toothless biker?
God, I don't remember him.
We had a community grill that we would all share.
That's right, yeah. On the front porch.
On the front porch. And I was making a steak one day that I had bought, and this toothless guy, sorry, that was a spoiler alert. This old biker guy came out, and he goes, "Well, you didn't make any for me. What the hell?" And giving me a hard time. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, And so on our last, I forget, it was like our last week. The guy didn't even live there. He would just show up and hang out on the porch.
That was a common occurrence.
It was a lot like King of the Hill, where they're just standing out by the fence post, just drinking a beers, and yep. Yeah. And so I think it was like my last week there or something. I'm like, I'm gonna buy that guy's steak. I bought a steak, and I'm cooking on the grill, and he's over for this. We had like a bonfire or something, and I hand him the steak, and I said, "Here, I got you this steak." He goes, "No, thank you." I said, "No, yeah, no, take it. No, I got this for you." He said, "No, I really, no, I don't want it." I said, Come on, no, you gotta take it. He goes, and he just spoke. He's like, "No, I do not want the steak." And then he like got all quiet and took me over. He's like, "I don't have any teeth." Oh, he opens up his mouth, and sure enough, I noticed he spoke with kind of a lisp, but
he didn't even have dentures.
It was
gum.
Just gums, just nothing in there. And I said, "Okay, well, I guess I'll eat this one too then."
Oh, yeah. So this house Mike and I lived, it was basically was like a 6-bedroom house, but it was just, each room was like, it was an efficiency.
Yeah. Each room had its own little like kitchenette and bathroom, and
it's basically a bed and a table.
Yep.
It was great. It was just a little tiny thing.
All I needed.
Yeah, it was. And I'll never forget one time coming home. I don't think you were, because you were gone.
That was a summer of weddings that I had to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, with your dependable truck.
Yep. Very dependable. I just sold that last year.
Oh, you still had it?
I still had it all the way up to last year. I sold it.
Wow.
I sold it for almost as much as I bought it for.
No way.
Yeah.
That thing had seen a lot of road. when you had it.
It had a pretty rough life.
Yeah. It
But,
somehow got you it got you most of the way there. Then you had to do something to it to get you to the finish line.
it got me 80% of the way, you know.
But so I think it was a weekend you might have been gone. It was typically I was done at the farm like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I got
Those
home.
days are over, aren't they?
Yeah, long gone. And I get home and I see all these cars in the driveway. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, they have friends over. And I'm walking into the house, and Angel lived on the first floor right next to the door to go into the house. And I see them looking out the window. There's all these people looking at me through the window. They're waving to me, and Eric, come in. And of course, we'd been there for a couple months, so we knew them pretty well. I go inside. Oh, hey, you want a beer? Like, yeah, sure, I'll have a beer. Cracked a beer with them. And I'm like, what are you guys up to? Oh, we're getting tattoos. Here we are in this lady's kitchen. There's, I think it was RJ.
Very sterile,
yeah.
I might add.
RJ's getting a tattoo on his shoulder with a heart, and it said "Mom" across it.
It's like straight out of a cartoon.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, Eric, you should get a tattoo. And I'm like, nah, nothing is tattooed. I just like, nah, I'm good. So this guy, I've never seen this guy before who's giving the tattoo. And,
Was it the toothless guy?
It could have been. I don't remember that guy. I only saw this guy, the tattoo artist. I only saw him once. And so he's there working away on RJ's arm. And I go, hey, just like making small talk with him. I'm like, so how'd you learn how to do this? And, I learned in prison. And I'm like,
So most people.
oh, okay. And then
That's what I learned about
they all
digesters.
look at me like Angel and everyone. They turn to me. They go, oh, he wasn't in there for anything bad. Sure, that's what they all say.
Yeah. Sure, it was a executive money laundering.
Yeah. He looked just like that type. But no, that was kind of
the Craig Estates.
The Craig Estates. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I remember driving down the road like 3 or 4 miles from the apartment, and I see this guy like waving me down, and I'm like, what the heck? So I pull over, and it was the landlord. I forget what his name was, like
David
Craig. Yeah, that's Craig. What it was. David Craig. And he goes, "Can you give me a ride?" Where's your car? Doesn't matter. Okay. So I gave him a ride back to his apartment, or to his place, which was like down the road. They had a nicer apartment building down the road.
Well, because he would always be at the house. The night they were giving the tattoos, he was there.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was waiting to get one too, but it was interesting. It was a lot, because like you said, we'd get home from work and they would all be out on the porch drinking beer. And he said, it's like the king of the hill. It's like we get home from a long day of work and they go, boy, you guys work a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What do you guys do?
But
I don't even know what they did for a living. I don't think they did
Pete.
anything.
So Pete was an artist.
Oh.
And he was
He's
originally
from Alaska.
Well, he's originally from Maine, moved to Alaska, did like boating, fishing, and then he claimed he moved back to Maine because his mother was getting old.
Yep.
And did he ever tell you a story about how he said his dad was in the CIA? Like, this is kind of the guy. Like, these are the type. Like,
no, I don't think ever.
He told me
his father was a fisherman.
Well, yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me to tell you that and tell me something else. But he was a really nice guy. But I remember he was like, I think my dad was in the CIA. I go, why do you say that? He's like, well, we moved all over the world when I was younger, and he never told me exactly what he did. And as soon as we would move from one country to the next, that country would start blowing up. I'm like, oh, maybe
he's onto something.
So
the CIA did all their LSD, experiments on Pete. Probably that's why he was the way he was, I think.
Yeah. He probably
I forget when this was, obviously a few years ago, but like I found a crumpled up piece of paper. It was at one of the times when I was moving, and it had his like email address on it that he gave me before. Oh, we gotta stay in touch. All right, I'll make sure to email you. We'll be my little pen pal.
Yeah, they loved us.
Yeah, we were celebrities.
because we were stealing their internet when we first got there.
Yeah.
And we were like, what's this Angel wireless network? And we hooked onto it, and it was no password. And then she asked you.
She asked me, she's like, are you guys using Angel internet? Maybe. I don't know how the whole Wi-Fi thing works. And I just turned on my computer, and it was connected to the internet. She said, I think there's that other woman that lived across the hall from me that was the nurse that worked nights. And they're like, I think she's stealing our Wi-Fi because recently our signal has gone. Our Wi-Fi strength is way lower. Network strength way lower than it used to be. I said, oh, that's weird. Like, we're gonna put a password on it. Oh, really? I think that's a good idea. Well, you can have the password. Oh, okay. All right, good. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We've been sucking the internet off her for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But no, that was a lot of fun. Good experience.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah. Huh. I'm trying to think. I'd eat Doughboys a lot. That was my staple.
That was a good right down the road, or the Creamery.
Oh yeah.
That was a good spot.
Yeah.
But no, it was and we would go the Foglers, the owners of Stonyville, awesome family. It's what 20 some employees, but probably 80% are direct family members who work there.
Yeah.
Which was really neat. And
I remember you I didn't find out till like the last week we were there that you guys did herd check every Friday or every Tuesday. Every Tuesday
morning.
Yeah. And that the vet brought donuts every single week.
And then, so it wasn't the vet. So the beef truck, the take cull cows, showed up every Monday, Tuesday. So Monday he would show up, take calves, take a load of cows. But then Tuesdays he would take calves, take a load of cows, and he would drop off a dozen donuts, a breakfast pizza,
sandwiches, right?
Yeah, 5-6 breakfast sandwiches, a breakfast pizza, 3 or 4 orange juice bottles, 3 or 4 chocolate milk. So when that guy showed up, when the beef truck showed up, usually like around 6, we get started doing vet check around like 5. By 6, he would show up, and we were right next to him. So we were the first ones, like the herdsman, myself, and the vet, and we would dig in. And then everyone else on the farm within the next like 15 minutes would show up, just scrounging whatever's left over.
I had no idea this was going on
until the last week.
And then because I was on the digester, which was somewhat like separate, from the dairy. It was about a half a mile down the road, but everyone was like, oh no, you should get some donuts. And so I like wandered through the barn, no idea where I was going, and I get there and they're just all. I think I tried for like 2 weeks, and both times there was just like the gross donuts left,
the plain
donuts left, and one of them had a bite taken out of it.
Even the Hispanics, they knew about it, and they would get done or with their shift or whatever, and they would come in and they would start stuffing their pockets with donuts and stuff.
Don't worry, I had plenty of food waste over at the digester that I could have my pick of whatever I wanted over there.
Yeah. So that digester, I guess, kind of getting back into digesters, you took in food waste there as well in Maine.
Yeah, so it's interesting. They started a company. It was right when I was towards the end of our time there, and they're still around today. That essentially does the same thing that Natural Upcycling does, where they go around and collect all food waste, but they take in a lot of liquid waste. So grease trap waste. So like there's trucks, like septic trucks, that go around to restaurants, and they'll clean out the fryer oil and the fryer grease, and like the McDonald's, they have like these grease traps that all the drains on the floor go into these grease traps, and so they'll collect that, and really kind of nasty stuff, but makes a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. And then there's other products like called glycerin, which is essentially a byproduct of soap making. It's also a byproduct in the production of biofuels from corn ethanol. And so we'll take in this glycerin, and it's essentially like jet fuel for these digesters. And you just see, if you're looking at like kind of the trend page on the gas trend page, it just skyrockets, as about a half hour after you put this stuff in. So they're taking in a lot of that waste as well. And so, kind of back to, the digester I'm working at now, in Auburn, we've been, kind of steadily increasing the volumes that we're taking in, just as we kind of improve processes and, improve efficiencies and the mechanical abilities of the digester itself, and also kind of build up the populations of the biology in the digester itself.
And when you're in Maine as well, they had what was that extremely corrosive gas?
Yeah, that was hydrogen sulfide. So,
You helped solve that.
yeah. So I didn't do any solving. I just knew a guy who knew a guy.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
No, so there's as I mentioned earlier, one of the gases that gets produced with the methane is, it's obviously CO2, and then H2S or hydrogen sulfide. It's a really corrosive gas, really deadly gas. And that was also the gas we were doing experiments on when I was in Germany. So when we were doing these tests at the research lab in Germany, we were testing different additives we could add into the digester that would prevent this gas from being produced, or it would also just sequester that gas once it was produced. And so we were when I was in Maine, we were looking at how can we get this gas cleaner, because if you have too high of concentration of H2S, it's really bad for the engines. A lot of times it can actually cancel the warranty on the engine. So the engine manufacturers say that voids the warranty. We won't make any. It's because you had this really too high level of hydrogen sulfide. So it's really a goal for a lot of these places to reduce the amount of hydrogen sulfide as much as they can. So we were looking at there's a lot of really expensive gas scrubbing systems that are used to kind of clean the gas. And I kind of, there's a lot of construction involved and a lot of processes that just add to kind of the complexity of the digester. And so I kind of reached out to some colleagues of mine from the lab in Germany and said, hey, we've got this hydrogen sulfide problem. I don't remember learning this huge problem in Germany. A lot of the digesters kind of had that solved, had that kind of checked as a box of things they didn't have to worry about anymore. And so he said, well, with this. The products that you were testing in the lab, some of them are commercially available now. And so he kind of referred me to them, and we ended up being the first digester in the U.S. to import a product called Ferrosorp, which is essentially ferric hydroxide, which gets put in. It's a powder. A lot of the other additives are kind of, they have to be added in as a liquid, so you'll have to have large tanks to buffers tanks or storage tanks to store this liquid in and kind of dose it in. But the powder, it's highly concentrated, so you can just throw it in your feedstock tank or your, along in with the manure, and it kind of mixes in well with what you're feeding the digester. And in 2 days it reduced the level of H2S from, I believe it was like 1,000 down to like 50 parts per million.
And what's a good level to be at, like a sustainable?
Well, so I mean, 0 is where is the goal.
Yeah.
But
the economic threshold.
Yeah. So a lot of the engine manufacturer warranties are like 300 or 400 parts per million. So anywhere below that is kind of the goal. So yeah, we ended up. I ended up saving them kind of $300,000 or $400,000 by just kind of bringing in this product as opposed to kind of building a big scrubbing system. So the problem is, that stuff is pretty expensive as well, and a lot of places aren't in the U.S. Their goal isn't gas production and gas quality. Their goal is to try to just put as much through the digester as they can. And so, the Ferrosorp, never really took off too much in the U.S. It still is it's actually kind of funny. So when I was in school, after that internship, I worked for Pro Dairy and Dairy Environmental Systems, which was kind of the digester arm of the Pro Dairy program. And we did a lot of kind of outreach and case studies so we'd go around to different farms in New York State that had digesters, and we'd write up these case studies about the digester, just kind of facts and figures about the digesters themselves, and then kind of a history of the how it kind of came to be, how it was constructed, and how much it costs, and kind of what were some lessons learned. And so Pro Dairy was really interested in this Ferrosorp and this, as an option for hydrogen sulfide mitigation. And so I wrote up this whole case study on Ferrosorp, and did a lot of stuff like that got kind of published onto the website. And a few years down the road, working with Noblehurst, they were also looking into kind of what can we do to really reduce this hydrogen sulfide. And I said, well, there's this product I've worked with before. If you guys don't want to put a big expensive scrubber in for one reason or another, I said, I can see, where this was, because, for a while we were talking about doing a distributorship in the U.S. and ended up just not kind of coming to fruition. But so I followed kind of the chain of kind of where the baton was passed after I left Maine, and came to this company. I don't even remember the name of the company now, but out of like Iowa. And I said, hey, you guys are a distributor for this product, Ferrosorp? She says, yeah. I said, you guys have any like studies or information? And she said, oh yeah, here's our brochure, and here's this study. And she sends it to me, and I kind of laugh. All of it was mine. I said I should have put some sort of copyright on it. So I reached out to the lady. I said, that thing you just sent me. She's like, yeah. And it's like, you removed the title page. She's like, oh, yeah. I said, I wrote that. She goes, oh, I didn't. We got it from Cornell University. I'm like, yeah, that was me. So essentially, you guys don't know any more about this product than I do.
Yeah,
I guess, right?
The baton kind of sat on the ground, and you end up picking it right back up where you left it. Huh.
Yeah, so I didn't know whether to be offended, because I was copied or plagiarized, or flattered.
Was your name wasn't on it?
It wasn't on it. No, it was not on it.
No credit then.
No credit. Yeah, exactly. I'm still waiting for my royalties.
I'm sure you can find a lawyer that represents you.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of them wanting to grab onto something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Take a trial lawyer, but so.
Yeah, so at the digester now, we actually have a scrubbing unit. So which is essentially the same thing as the powder, but kind of you're adding a biological process to it. So it's mixing in oxygen, and there's like an iron additive to it, because the iron is what actually binds with the sulfur and reduces the H2S content. And actually now I'd say that the scrubber is actually a lot less work than adding that powder in, but it is a much higher capital investment, and you really need to be producing quite a bit of gas to actually make it worth your while to put in the actual scrubber. But at our site, before it goes into the scrubber, it's about 200 to 300 parts per million. And then it actually goes through the scrubber, and it's down to like 0 to 10 parts per million. So
yeah, it's. I remember when we were in Maine. I don't think the scrubber technology probably wasn't as good.
It was pretty new.
Yeah,
it was pretty new. At least in for this application.
Yeah. So, and having a digester, running manure through a digester can be beneficial for a dairy. It takes odor away.
Yeah. So, I mean, dairy manure and digestion are, work hand in hand together. They're really good. So, from a digester perspective, adding dairy manure into a digester is it makes the process a whole lot smoother. So, the basically what you want to do when you're feeding a digester, when you're running a digester, is consistency. It's the same thing you're trying to do when you're feeding a cow. You just want to keep that feed as in front of them all the time, as consistent quality, as consistent quantity as you can, and then you'll reap the benefits of it. And it's the same thing with the digester. You want to feed it consistently all the time, and the same quality material, and that's really easy to do with dairy manure, because the dairy manure is a really consistent product. And then also the biology that we're using in the digester is the same exact biology that's in the stomach of the cow. So you're constantly being re-inoculated with new microorganisms that comes through the manure of the from the cow, and so you're always having a kind of a new there's always microorganisms dying. There's always microorganisms being born, and each time you feed a digester a treatment of dairy manure, it's kind of just adding a shot of more biology into your digester. So it really helps the process. But on the dairy side, the great aspect to having a digester is, one, you can reduce your energy and electricity costs. You reduce your carbon footprint. Really kind of complete that circle of you're producing food, you're producing electricity, you're producing fiber. But then also it's really great because when you smell the terrible smells of the dairy industry, you're smelling methane. And so, by removing that methane, you're removing that odor. There still is some, of an ammonia, kind of a stale ammonia smell that's still left over. But there's places that live, as the housing developments keep kind of growing and expanding closer out into the country. It's becoming more and more of a priority for these dairy farms to say, oh shoot, what am I going to do about this odor now? Where I know 2 farms that one will spread and get complaints every day, and another one will spread that has a digester and nobody even notices. And
it's kind of it takes a lot of the solids right out of the manure, so it's just an effluent.
So it's a lot easier to pump.
It's
because essentially what we're trying to break down are the volatile solids in the manure, and so what comes out is a much more watery, I guess. A lot more fluid consistency. So that's kind of the elevator pitch there for build a digester on your farm.
And have Mike come consult.
I'll consult for you. So actually though, we so going back to the Cayuga digester, we I mentioned earlier the county's initial plan was they wanted to bring in dairy manure for it. When the company that owns it now bought it, they really had to kind of revamp the whole business plan for it. So the shift went from being a dairy manure digester to being a food waste only digester. So now we are 99% food waste, and some months we're 100% food waste, and it's a lot trickier of a process to manage because, one, you're not getting a new inoculation of bacteria with every time you feed. You are you're charged with keeping the bacteria that you have alive and kind of growing those populations. And so that takes a lot closer monitoring of that biology. There's different labs and testing that we do every day to make sure that biology is healthy and thriving. And there's a lot of kind of components we look at. But if I get in a truckload of ice cream today and I get in a truckload of beer tomorrow, those have 2 very different effects on the digester, and so managing that as well can be challenging. But and it's why a lot of food waste digesters, have a lot of biological problems because they don't, they're just processing what they get that day or what they can in the moment. They're not looking at it from a more holistic perspective of, well, let's take, one pallet of this and one pallet of that and kind of make a recipe almost of to keep what you're feeding into the digester as consistent as you can. And that's, part of that is the infrastructure you have at your disposal. So, we have a couple 100,000 gallon storage tank that we put everything into first and try to keep that as mixed as possible. So then, these smaller variations that we're adding into it, don't have as large of an impact before we feed it into the digester. A lot of dairy digesters in the early, in the late 2000s, so 2008, 2009, it was a real big push, at least in Cayuga County, to build these digesters. And, the dairy farms were trying to bring in food waste, but they would get a truckload of acid whey or something, and they just shove it all in the digester at once, and then they'd kill the biology because, the biology wasn't used to that. It was really high strength material, and they're used to kind of the lower strength, bacteria laden dairy manure, and it would kind of shock the system. So then they would say, all right, well, let's put a tank in, and we'll just kind of dose it in slowly and kind of change the material that we're feeding at a slower rate instead of just kind of shocking it all at once.
If you were to, like you said, you shock and you kill, you probably don't kill all the bacteria, but
right.
how do you kick that bacteria back into
dairy manure? So
that's a cure. That is it
yeah.
because these were designed originally for? It's just that's
just nature. I mean, the anaerobic digestion is, it's all about technology right now, but the process itself is just science and nature of microbiology. And so there are third world countries out there where they'll go out and collect the patties from their one cow and put it in a 55-gallon drum and put a balloon on top, and then at the end of the day they'll put a brick on top of the balloon and use that to fire up their cook stove. And it's the same process. Yeah. And so we in Cayuga we work with natural upcycling obviously is kind of a key component to the operations of that digester, and we were founded by Noblehurst Farms, which is another digester. So the best material is digestate from another food waste digester, because that bacteria has kind of acclimated to that type of waste and that level of what we call COD, or chemical oxygen demand. And so if we're seeing, and this has happened a few times since I've been operating it, where we're starting to see a drop in biology. We bring in a 3 or 4 truckloads of either dairy manure or digestate from another digester, and to kind of kickstart it back up.
Huh. Wow, that's cool. Cow shit is this answer.
Yeah, cow shit is the answer to all of the world's problems, our energy crisis, everything.
Wow, that's I nenever thought about that, in terms of what would happen if you kill off and how to kickstart. So.
And that's why we have kind of testing equipment on site where we're trying to monitor on a daily basis what is going on inside that tank that you can't see inside of. But we're taking the material after it comes out and checking the pH, checking what the total inorganic carbons are, what that ratio of that to the volatile fatty acids, and that kind of is a clue into how our biology is actually digesting the food waste. And we also look at pH and temperature, and we're always trying to monitor that. And a lot of digesters in the U.S. have been slow to adopt that kind of mentality of data and collecting as much data and as much information as you can. And, I can't imagine operating a digester without that knowledge, especially a food waste digester, because it's like you're flying blind. There's no, you have no idea what's going on in there. Then all of a sudden your gas production tanks and you don't know why.
Yeah. What do they say? You can't manage what you can't measure.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that, yeah. You can't measure. Yeah. So it's,
So we try to collect as much data as we can about every aspect of the whole process: temperatures, flow rates, everything.
Does
pH.
External temperature, like winter, summer, does that make a big?
That makes a difference in how we operate. So obviously, if it's colder outside, we have to make sure that we're getting enough heat to the digester to keep that digester at a stable temperature. So, depending on how well the tank is insulated or how well your hot water system works, all those, you've got to try to keep that digester in a about 100 degrees, which would be in the mesophilic range, as they'd call it, and to keep that anaerobic bacteria really happy and producing gas.
About the same temperature as a cow.
Yeah, exactly. And winter is just difficult. So, it's the same reason it's difficult on a dairy farm with everything
Frozen,
freezing and snow covering everything up. Where you're like, where did I leave that? Covered in snow now.
Yeah, you get a foot of snow.
Yeah,
everything's covered. Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Well, cool. Is there anything else you'd like to share or anything?
Any other questions about digesters?
If this were live, we could take.
Yeah.
We could take
questions from the audience.
Yeah, if there is one.
No one's gonna listen. Just so you know, Eric, just your viewership or your listenership is just gonna drop after this. Nobody's gonna pay attention.
You're the only person I know who can make cow manure extremely interesting subject.
That's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, that's no, I think I find it fascinating. Like I said, it's being able to do something like this is cool because I get to learn a lot. And I've talked with you, but I don't think I've ever talked to this extent.
We did I'm sure you were involved with this as well, but that dairy cow birthing center at the state fair, where there'll be a crowd of people and to watch a cow give birth. And I remember I did it with Kenny Quick, and he had the microphone and was giving a little talk about what happens when the cow is born. And cow ended up taking a lot longer than what they first. So there's a lot of people in the crowd waiting on the bleachers and just kind of getting a little impatient. Kenny comes over and explain to them what a digester is and what a digester does, just to fill some time. So I go into a whole thing about digesters and the biology and the bacteria and the whole thing, and I get done, and just all the eyes in the crowd had glazed over, and Kenny looks at me and goes, I did not tell you to give them a dissertation the intricate details of digestion. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know where to stop.
They didn't leave though.
They didn't leave.
They were just mentally checked out.
Yeah, exactly. They were trying to look over my shoulder at the cow giving birth behind me.
Oh man.
Yeah, so.
But no.
Well, thanks for having me again.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. And if I change careers, I'll come back on again and let you know what I'm up to.
When you start your consulting gig, you can come on.
When I become an astronaut, I'll come back on and explain to you how I got there.
When you or when you become a pilot,
you'll
have to take me up sometime.
I'll take you up. We'll do a live stream in the cockpit.
Might be a little scary. I don't know if I want to be your first person in flight.
Okay. We'll see. I don't think Morgan does either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who will be your first?
I took Morgan and Grant up a few weeks ago, and that was really, really cool. Except Grant was really excited for the first 10 minutes, but he was sitting in the back seat behind my instructor, and I guess about 5 minutes into the flight, he kept getting really mad and would lean over to Morgan and say, I want to sit in Jim's seat. which is my instructor. He wanted to sit in the front and steer the plane. It was no longer exciting for him to sit in the back. He just wanted to be up there with all the controls.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll definitely have to bring you up. We'll fly over the farm and
That'd be cool.
Get a nice picture of the farm for you.
That'd be real cool.
Yeah. So,
Mike, hey man, it was a pleasure having you on.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
And I guess if you have any questions for Mike, I don't know if you have a Facebook or email I could put on if someone has
you can email me. My email is micheal@naturalupcycling.com, and I'll give you that email. You can put in the link. And if you have any questions about anaerobic digestion or food waste in New York State, give me a call.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in a week or so.